Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage.
Put away the lingerie. I want to know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the news. I want to hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I'll part the shades, just pull up a chair and tell me more.
When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On this show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform, Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the sex industry. Learn more at assembly4.com. ASSEMBLYFOUR.com. Hi, welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. Today, we are going to be talking to Ava Adore, a bombshell from Chicago who spends 6 weeks out of the year hanging out in the desert in Nevada at Burning Man. So I can't wait to have that conversation with her. So before we get into our interview with Ava, I want to talk a little bit about how the seasons are shaping up. So this is season 1. I haven't really said that up until this point, but this is season 1 and every season is going to have 20 episodes. This is episode 15 of season 1, and that means we are going to have 4 more regular episodes, episodes 16, 17, 18, and 19. And then episode 20, the final episode of the season, is going to be a roundtable discussion with several of our guests. And we will make an announcement soon about what that roundtable is going to be, but we're really excited about that. And we're also in the process of putting together, you know how at the end of every episode, I ask each guest what they're reading and what they're listening to. What we're going to do when we come to the close of this season is we're also going to put together playlists on Spotify and YouTube of all of our guests' recommendations and also a list of all of the books that our guests have recommended. So we're really excited about that. And that will be a work in progress, but that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And I hope you guys are really excited about the recommendations that are coming from all of our guests. I also want to remind you that as we get into season 2, I'm looking for new guests. And if you are a sex worker and you want to talk to me about one of your hobbies, you can send us an email at nothustlingpod@proton.me. You've probably gotten the rhythm of the show by now, but we are talking to sex workers about their lives outside of sex work. So just send us a quick note, tell us that you work in the industry, what you like to do, and what you want to talk about on this show. And we are open to many, many different things. Today, we're talking to Ava Adore, and this is going to be a fun episode because we're talking about Burning Man, where they not only go as a regular participant in Burning Man, but they work for the organization for 6 weeks out of the year and live in the desert. And that is wild to me because I can't camp at all, but I happen to be married to somebody who, prior to our relationship, was very into Burning Man and went and was part of the communities. And a funny thing that I talk about is that when we got married, the burner community brought all of the supplies for our wedding. So that was really cool and helped us set it all up because they are good at creating a little community and then tearing it down. And that's what they did for our wedding too. So to get into this interview, let me give you a brief introduction to Ava Adore. She is a full service sex worker and professional kinkster. She is also a voracious globetrotter and road tripper, photographer, former mental health professional, and native Chicagoan. I think that's the right way to say it. When she's not planning her next trip or tattoo, she can be found in peace and quiet reading her books. So let's turn to our interview. Hi, Ava. It is so nice to have you on the show.
Hi, Jessie. It is so nice to be on the show.
Yeah. How have you been?
I cannot complain. Going through a move.
You are? Like moving houses or moving cities, or what are you doing?
I would never leave Chicago. It would take a lot to get me out of here.
Okay. Have you ever lived anywhere else, or have you always been in Chicago?
I have always lived here, been traveling the States and the globe for as long as I possibly have been. And I still choose to live here.
Yeah. What do you like about Chicago?
It's got such great, there's so much nature in Chicago.
That's not what I think of when I think of Chicago, but I do like Chicago.
Yes. A lot of people don't think about that, but we have just the amount of green space that we have, the fact that the entire lakeshore is public land, the amount of parks we have, the money and time that has been put into these public parks. And then just the fact that I have 400-year-old trees in my backyard. There's just old trees. There's lots of grass. There's just a little bit more space than places like, Boston and New York.
Yeah.
But
people seem to be nicer there because it's still Midwest than New York or Boston or Philly.
Yeah, actually, people here are quite nice. I rarely see people being a straight up asshole to anyone. But I love it. The food is phenomenal. You can get anything you want here and it'll be top notch.
Is it pretty expensive to live in Chicago?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's one of the cheapest big cities. Every time people hear bitch about rent, I'm like, hold on there, buddy. I'm like, I don't think you understand the concept of rent hikes if we're talking about this here.
Because I have this idea because I live in Pittsburgh, and because it's a bigger city than Pittsburgh, I'm like, oh, it must be much more expensive to live in Chicago.
No, it's actually more expensive to live in mid-sized cities than it is to live here.
That's so interesting.
It's also become a queer haven. Anyone in the LGBTQ community who has needed to flee from anywhere in the Midwest or near South that is oppressive, violent, whatever negative things they're experiencing there. So there's been a lot of queer flight to Chicago. And because for the longest time, and even still now, you can pay $500 a month in rent and get a job presenting exactly how you look at that moment.
Yeah.
And anywhere. It might not be your place of choice, but a Starbucks or a thrift store or, somewhere you're going to be able to get a job here.
Yeah. That's really neat. And it's good for people to know that, especially in the Midwest. Yeah.
Yes. And I have met so many folks here that fled from other places, that have go their home. And it very much is a queer haven for that reason. And it
yeah.
I love it that way. And it is one of the only places that people aren't going to question really your presentation, your hair color, it's just how many piercings you have. A lot of people here just really don't care. So that's a good endorsement for people who are trying to flee.
Right.
Or oppressive environments. Right. Because
I wouldn't think you could rent an apartment for that cheap in Chicago.
It would be a roommate situation.
Sure.
But but absolutely. It's totally possible. I mean, you can find a 3-bedroom apartment for $2,000.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It's not even a shitty one. So it's very affordable comparative to any other big city I've ever spent time in. And I love New York.
I do too. I love working in New York because there's just I like going there for 3 or 4 days working and then coming back to my smaller city. This is great.
I love it. And I feel like coming back to Chicago is my coming back to my smaller city. I love New York. I could just never live there, but I will travel there any opportunity I get.
Right. And it's easy for me to travel there. It's like an hour flight and that's it.
Exactly.
And
or like,
it's
hopping on a train isn't even that hard at that point.
right. Yeah. So it's like my favorite place to go work because it's easy to get there. There's a bajillion customers there. Like,
Yes, you don't even have to have a built-in clientele to be successful on a random trip to New York.
I don't think you do. And I have not had that situation in other cities, like some cities, like I do well in Ohio, in all the cities in Ohio for some reason. But I've gone to like Chicago and only seen one person. Like DC, I would think I would do better in, and I don't.
Yeah, Chicago, it's very much a coin toss. I've heard that from almost everybody. I don't know why. I still like the Charlie from Always Sunny meme, trying to figure it out. But to this day, I could not pin it down for you of why.
Yeah, right. It's just so funny because if you're a tour, if you do tours, like it's so weird because some cities I'll just go to and I'll be like, wow, this is so easy. It's like Ohio's like that, New York is like that for me, and then other places I go and I'm like, this wasn't worth the money to come here.
Oh, Cincinnati, Augusta, like I'm like turning people away. Like I'm just like, what? Like this is where I'm just like killing it. Okay.
That's how I felt like Cleveland. I'm like, why do I have so many people interested in Cleveland?
Cleveland, I was there for like 3 days once, like 2 nights, 3 days. And it was so busy. And it was almost all kink stuff too, which was really interesting.
Fun. Yeah.
So it was, but I like touring in Ohio because like it's a very repressed state.
So people are like, oh my God, you're here? Let's do this.
Yes. And also just, making their life a little bit better.
Yeah.
One appointment at a time.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not actually, this is not a sex work show, but that's all interesting. So I'm going to leave it in. So I like talking to other touring like escorts and seeing what works for them because it is so weird.
We'll have a conversation about that because I have a whole manual I've been working on.
Oh, really?
Yes.
For touring?
Yes, because I have been a 50-50 touring home provider for a very long time now.
You tour Pittsburgh sometimes, don't you?
I haven't been there in years.
Okay.
But
I don't know why I thought that.
DC more often, Philly sometimes. Sometimes I'll do the New York, Philly, DC route.
Yeah.
I often end up skipping Pittsburgh on the way home in favor of Cleveland.
Yeah. I can see that because Cleveland is a good city to work in.
And it's the halfway between DC and home for me, Chicago. So it's kind of like, it just works out that way to like split it up a little bit.
Right.
And a lot of people from Pittsburgh or the Pittsburgh area, I've had to drive see me in Cleveland.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's like an 1.5 to 2 hour drive for them.
Right.
So.
It's not a big deal to go to Cleveland from Pittsburgh.
We'll talk about that because I have so much autistic data I have collected over the years. I am
so interested in that. Yeah. But I had you on to not talk about touring, to talk about Burning Man, which you said that you are a big part of. So I would love to hear about how you got into that. And just, can you give like kind of I think it's so in the culture now that people know what Burning Man is, but can you still give like a little thumbnail sketch of it?
So what it is, it's an art festival at its core. It started back in like 1986 and moved to where we have it now in like 91 or 92. And it moved from a beach on San Francisco to a big open, trying to kill you every minute of the day desert in northwestern Nevada, outside of Reno. So when we get there, we build a giant city in the middle of nowhere, based on art and participation in community. And then when everyone leaves, we take it all apart and clean it all up like we were never there.
But and there's very core like principles to Burning Man too, about like leaving no trace of having been there, right?
That is our number one. We had 2 to start with back in the day when you could still, like bring guns and blow shit up with absolutely no abandon, with wild abandon. And back then, the two rules.
Did you start at the very beginning in 91?
No, I was barely born at the very beginning.
Okay. All right.
So yeah,
I forget people are younger than me. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
I have a lot of friends, some of them are even in their 70s, who have been doing this since the dead ass beginning.
Yeah.
So I have some great lore and just like, you know, our own community history through ourselves. But yeah, back when we moved to the desert, it was a whole different thing. We had two principles: leave no trace and spectatorship. You must participate.
Yeah.
Which are still two of my favorites, along with there's 10 pillars of Burning Man. I'm not going to like list them all because they don't really matter that much, but community like civic engagement is one that I really care about. Immediacy is what I really care about, and radical inclusion. If you show up, you're accepted. If you're here, you're one of us. Unless you like, you know, radically behave in a way that is not conducive to the city that we built.
Yeah. And the principles there. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, the long story short is, why do we do it? Because we can. Is it easy? No.
What's that?
Is it easy?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. We don't do this because it's easy. It's always hard, no matter what, to build a city in the middle of the desert. But we give over $1 million in art grants.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yes, it's the current budget's 1.3 million. Like, I am not an official representative for Burning Man. I just happen to be a seasonal employee who's been doing this for way too long.
So you actually work for Burning Man?
I do. I work for Burning Man. I won't say exactly where I work for Burning Man.
Okay.
But I work for one of the major teams that is there very early and leaves late. So I'm out there and I live in my little 1962 trailer that I love more than life itself right now for about 5 to 6 weeks.
Wait, so do you drive in your trailer from Chicago to? No, you have it there.
In Nevada. It's stored on a friend's land. And one of the perks of being Burning Man staff is they're like, hey, we need to get like 100 pickup trucks to the playa. You want to drive one of those and get it here in one piece, and we don't care what you do with it in the meantime. I mean, I say that, but
so you have a pickup, you have a Burning Man pickup truck?
I drive like a 3/4 ton diesel when I get to Reno, and then I tow my trailer to Burning Man myself.
Okay.
And it's a lovely drive. It's absolutely beautiful. It's about 2 hours northwest of Reno. And we hold the event right outside a Paiute reservation called Pyramid Lake, which is important to us to include them in the fact that we are having an event on their land. So we invite them to come bless it at the beginning before we build anything. And they love to do it. They come and do it every year. It's a beautiful ceremony. And then we also, they can come, locals can come for free. And then we also make sure that a lot of our rollover goes to things like solar powering their entire school, their community center. So we try to give back that way, which is really amazing. I like that part about it, because we been in the community that we happen to invade. That is a very small community. The desert town nearby is a town called Gerlach, Nevada. And it is a tiny town. Maybe 300 people live there. And that's including some of our Burning Man people. So it's really small. So we try to reduce the impact on the small town as much as possible.
So it's interesting you're talking about like grants and stuff. I had this interesting conversation with my partner the other day because so before we met, we got together 10 years ago. And prior to that, like the whole decade before they met me, and I'm going to make myself sound like a buzzkill now, but life just changed. They were in burner communities, and they'd been to Burning Man. And we went to one regional burn at the beginning of our marriage or at the beginning of our relationship it was in Delaware.
Okay. Yeah, it was very small.
Yeah. And
I used to run a regional burn around here for years and years.
Okay. And we were talking about, actually, it's really interesting. So when we got married, their burning friends brought like all of the stuff for our wedding. So they set up like, because they had like plates and knives and forks and like just a tent, a huge tent in case it rained. Like it was total, our wedding was completely like supplied by burners, and which was amazing.
That's
but
beautiful.
like,
I love that.
yeah, but we were having this conversation the other day because I don't know if you listened to the episode that we did on anarchism with, of this show with Lucy Bloom. And in it, we were talking about how how it's amazing in sex work and also in art, but like in sex work, much of our radical political work is funded by the tech dudes who are our clients. And I was talking about that with my partner, and they said, "Oh, well, that's how Burning Man works too." Which was really funny. They were like, at least when I was in it, there was like this infusion of like resources from the tech industry, like to like fund these art communities.
Yes, there definitely has been, a lot more tech traction, Google sending their people to Burning Man, Facebook sending their people to Burning Man. I mean, we don't really like, I can't say we as a whole. I can just say, from the general vibe of like my experience, because I've been going since 2011.
Okay.
And been working for the org in some capacity since 2012.
Okay. Wow, so you got into it fast, like into the...
I was helping run our regional burn here around Chicago, which is called Lakes of Fire, which is in Michigan. And I was helping run that with one of the leadership departments, and did that for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing leadership with them back in probably like 2009 or 10. And then from there, I started going to Burning Man and started bringing some stuff back, because something that Burning Man has people to know about is a mental health crisis response team.
Mm-hmm.
A former mental health professional, when I was at Burning Man, I worked at the time for that department. We were a crisis response, complete, meltdown, nothing else can work kind of response. Tripping hippies, we have our own people. There's a different department that deals with that. And it's not us. We were saved specifically for mental health emergencies and domestic violence, sexual assault. And I worked with that team for a long time. I was on that team for 5 or 6 years, and was a trainer for that team, was on some specialty teams for sexual assault, domestic violence.
Wow.
And I loved doing that, but it just felt too much like bureaucracy of work.
Yeah.
So that's when I moved to the current department I'm with now. I've been with my current department since 2013. So I was working kind of both at the same time. And now I've been with my department for, it'll be 9 years this year. And I have met some of the best people on earth, and created some of the best relationships thanks to Burning Man, but also learned a lot of skills I didn't have.
Can you go back and talk about the first year that you went, like in 2011, and what experience that was like for you, and how that kind of catalyzed you, like being so involved in it?
I always knew I was going to be involved in it because I have a volunteerism problem. I already knew with how involved I was with my regional, I knew I was going to get involved with Burning Man. And I had my eye on the mental health team at the very beginning. In 2011, I decided to go, and I really challenged myself. I had no idea how I was getting from the airport to the playa. I was not volunteering with anything. I was camping with a friend's theme camp, and everything to me was new.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very, very, very different place than it is now.
I've heard that.
It's very different. And I can say that. And to me, it's funny because in my group of friends and coworkers, I'm the baby. And, most of them are in their 40s and 50s. Yeah. So I'm definitely the baby. And I'm like, oh, I've only been going since 2011. Then I realize I'm like, that's like 13 years ago. Holy crap. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not a baby. The first year I went, we had 0 cell phone signal. You need to print out a map to get there because your cell phone signal would not work the whole way.
Yeah.
When we got cell phone signal in 2017, it was devastating.
Did it change the culture there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So in 2011 is when we really started to see that. 2012 is the first year we ever sold out, which is kind of what's been a pivot of like our culture there, especially the presence of tech culture.
Yeah.
In 2011 and 12, that's when we kind of started, or I guess maybe like 13 is when we really started to notice camps that were being assembled that had giant walls around them.
Yeah, which kind of goes against the radical inclusivity principle, doesn't it?
Absolutely does. It goes against a lot of principles to us. And we're also, decommodification is one of the principles. Like,
yeah, because there's no money at Burning Man, right? There can be no exchange of money.
Ice. You can buy ice. That's it. And the price hasn't changed in 10 years. Like you can buy ice. That's all you can buy. And we used to be able to have coffee, but then they decided it was stupid and they took it away.
But you can't have coffee there? Or you can't buy coffee?
You can't buy coffee. Okay. But the amount of coffee camps that exist at Burning Man, because a theme camp can bring whatever it wants to bring.
Right.
You can bring, Kentucky Fried Camp, fried bologna sandwich and a shot of Jameson every morning. Who came up with that? Who knows? Who cares? It's freaking great.
I know somebody who constructs a bowling alley there every year. She has like all the stuff to make like.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. She brings a bowling alley every year.
For Christ's sake, we have the roller disco.
Yeah, that's wild.
Like where you can go rent skates and go and bust your ass, on a hard surface that they put together and have disco balls. One year, my favorite project was Charcade. It was a flaming arcade. Every game you played was on fire. Like it's just like, can you do it? Let's see if we can do it.
Yeah.
You can't drive. You have to get around by foot, bike, or mutant vehicle. And what is a mutant vehicle? Anything that doesn't look like a car and is an art project. Like my favorite, his name is Walter. He's a 2-story VW bus built on a fire engine chassis and has a dance floor on the top. Like I love Walter to pieces. But like there's also like people that just like decided to make, like a plane or just like an army of tiny cupcakes out of golf carts. Like it's just you can't see anything like it anywhere else simply because it's concentrated chaos in the most beautiful way. And it's freedom of choice, the freedom of artistic choice, of participatory choice. The freedom to say no at Burning Man is one of my favorite things. Because in real life, you might feel obligated this way, that way, blah, blah. But at Burning Man, you can be like, people are like, oh, we're going to go do this thing. Do you want to come? And you can be like, no, I'm going to do this. And they're like, cool, bye. Like, see you later. And back when I started, we didn't have signal. We didn't have anything. You had to go find your friends. Like you were like in 3rd grade on your bike. It's great. Like you still kind of have to do that because like I have a radio now where I can tap into everyone at every given moment, but like we still like just go and find each other. Like
there's something nice about that. I haven't experienced that, but I feel like I'm missing that. Like sometimes even this is ridiculous, but sometimes when I watch TV shows and like somebody will walk in the front door and say to like their family, like, oh, how was your day? I was like, we're kind of missing that because we're so like keyed into everybody's like every moment of the day that like those conversations don't even make sense because you already know what somebody did throughout the day for the most part, like the people that you live with. So there's something like, I almost have like a nostalgic feeling for like the days when we weren't all connected all day long every day.
Oh, believe me, I share that. And Burning Man definitely fills that hole in all of our souls that we have in that area. Because, even if your phone does work, the signal's going to suck because everyone's trying to use it.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just,
and there's not an infrastructure built for that many people there.
No, we have emergency cell towers that are temporary. like they're not the full like pull on emergency ones, but it's large, but it's still a temporary tower. And you have to realize that Burning Man used to be like 40,000 people. It's 80 now.
Wow.
80,000, which is far too big. A lot of us feel that way, like across the board, whether you work there or not, doesn't matter. A lot of people feel that's too big.
Do you think that people are getting more out of the regional burns then because of how big it's gotten, or?
They're definitely getting more involved in the regionals. Yes.
Yeah.
And we encouraged them to do that ever since about the second year tickets started selling out.
Mm-hmm.
Like Burning Man itself has plugged regionals more, which is great because I love regionals. They are the best if you want to go to Burning Man, I always tell people go to a regional first.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to throw yourself into that kind of environment with no prior experience to what it's like. Mm-hmm. Not that it's stressful. I mean, of course it's stressful, but not in the ways you think it's going to be. It's stressful because you have to bring all your own water. You have to set up your house. You have to do all these things. Like everything takes a lot of physical and mental effort.
Right, right.
That's
the part that scares me off of it, I have to say.
A lot of people get scared of it, and that's okay. It's when
like it feels like a lot of work to me. And I've been to one region.
House I store in Nevada. Okay, it's a lot of work.
Like, you what? What did you say?
I have a second house I store in Nevada. It's a lot of work. Like the amount of like my friends on the West Coast will be like, oh yeah, we're building this week because the wind just fucked our whole structure last year, or whatever it is. There's a lot of physical and mental work that goes in. Mm-hmm. Until last year I bought a trailer from a friend. Best thing I ever did for myself. Best thing I ever did for myself. And I was living in tents, like nice canvas tents, and I had like jerry rigged up like an air conditioner in there and stuff.
Oh, that's nice.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good. You learn some good life hacks out there, of, like how to survive and like what doesn't work and what does work.
Yeah. Like I'm not a camper, so I went to that regional burn.
It makes it more difficult.
What's that?
If you're not a camper, that'll make it more difficult.
I know. Well, I went to the one and it was very fun and I had a good experience, except that it was, and I am very prissy. It was very muddy. Like there was mud everywhere. And I was like walking around like, squish, squish, squish. I did it. But I was newly in love, and that's the kind of thing you do when you're newly in love.
It is.
If PJ said to me now, like, let's go walk around in the mud, I'd probably be like, go ahead, honey. Like, I'll just stay here.
I'm lucky. I grew up as like a feral child in the woods with two artist parents. So I, it was like, think outside the box. What box? There was never a box to begin with in my family, So we grew up being, camping. I was camping in utero. Like so I love to camp. So it's a different vibe when you love to camp.
Right.
And there's a lot of things you can do to make it more accessible, more comfortable. People go with their camps because that teamwork makes the dream work. Like,
right.
Mm-hmm. You can't put up a stage structure alone.
Right.
Like can't. So it's like it's someone, one of my coworkers who I love to death. He said it's a trust fall exercise. It is one giant city of a trust fall exercise, because it is completely reliant on interdependence.
Yeah.
Have to work with each other.
Right.
And it gives you this freedom to fail.
Mm-hmm.
That it's so beautiful. The freedom to fail is just magnificent. Like, it doesn't mean no one's going to make fun of you if you fail in a hilariously spectacular way, but like you have the freedom and no one's going to hold it against you because everyone's there and everyone fails. And every failure I've had at Burning Man has taught me more than most failures I've had outside of it.
Thank you for listening to When We're Not Hustling. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing so will help other people find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me. That's so interesting because recently in January, I was on a panel at UNLV. They had this big inauguration of this erotic economies archive at the library there. So, which was very, very cool. And some of the people who donated to, or this couple who was in very early queer porn in the early, late 90s, early 2000s, donated a lot of their stuff to the library. So they were like the keynote speakers. Beautiful. And they're from San Francisco. And what they were saying that was really interesting when they were on the panel was that what was possible in queer culture in San Francisco in the late 90s, early 2000s was the ability to play with things and to fail in a way that we don't have anymore with the professionalization and with just how expensive it is to live. So they're we were just living in collectives and, rent was cheap and we didn't have, the stakes weren't very high. So we got to play.
Stakes were not high.
And we got to fail. And they were I feel really bad for the people who are there isn't space right now for us to fail.
No, when your entire life is on the internet, it's your failure could become the next, TikTok Stitch meme.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's very scary for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And Burning Man is almost, it's a lot of people do social media there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't. If you work, for example, just to give you the kind of idea of relationships that we have, these people know me better than almost anyone on earth. And I know them better than almost anyone on earth. Because when you're working 8 hours to 12 hours a day with someone for 5 to 6 weeks, and you're sitting around at a place where sometimes it gets really boring or you're on night shifts, you guys talk.
Yeah.
You really get to know each other on a level that, and most of my friends, I didn't know their real life profession outside of Burning Man for sometimes years.
And that's so wild because in the rest of our culture, we're pushed into talking about work.
It defines you in a way that there it doesn't. Nobody even asks. Nobody gives a shit. You come as the person you are and you come with what you have to offer and give and what you want to take from it. And it's very different than the real world. And we call it the cult that joins you, wash your own brain, but you're welcome to join the cult. We have stickers that, says, I love my cult. Just because it's very much making fun of, some of the perceptions of Burning Man, but also it is a very, very abnormal environment to have the privilege to be in for the time that I'm there.
Do you feel like that's changed you as a person? And how do you take that into the real world?
Oh, absolutely. It's changed me as a person. It has shown me that the skills that I have are innately valuable in a way that I did not see. It has taught me leadership skills that I did not have a chance to hone anywhere else. People see something in you. And one thing that we say is always be looking for your replacement. If you see someone who's coming up under you and they're really dedicated, they're really interested, they really care, nurture that person, take that person under your wing, teach them, mentor them or bring them into your team, bring them into your camp, give them more responsibility. And, it's just the fact of teamwork and not being afraid to ask for help because I'm terrible at asking for help.
Yeah. I'm not so good at that either.
I think a lot of us are very terrible. We're very independent human beings.
Right. That's how we end up living these lives where we're a company of one,
Exactly. This industry, we are very fiercely independent and we love it. And I love the opportunity because without sex work, I wouldn't have the option to go disappear in the desert for 2 months and work for just a minimum wage. It's I wouldn't have that freedom to go spend the best 2 months of my year in 100-degree weather and dust storms. So I've taken so much I've learned from Burning Man out into the real world. Just being treated different, like you're being treated at a different level. You know, you're being met as what you can bring to the in blank here, the camp, the city, the team, the whatever it is. If you want to it's radical inclusion. If you show up, you're part of us. Unless you give everyone a reason to not want to include you. Like,
right.
It was a very good experience growing up as, you know, a neuroatypical child with weird relationship skills and abilities. And then going to a place where I ended up joining a team of pretty much all ADHD people.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like one of the things that I've learned in sex work is that sex work is like entirely overrepresented by neurodivergent people. And
oh my God, absolutely. Yes.
like everybody in sex work is
throw a rock and you'll hit somebody neurodivergent or with what I also have.
And all of our clients too. It's not even just, I mean, it's not even just all the work. Like it's a lot of the workers. It's also a lot of the clients. And I'm wondering if, and that's, I think, why there are so many like lone wolves working in this industry, is like not being able to like easily integrate into other workforces or having disabilities of some sort. But I think I'm wondering if you find that in Burning Man too, like if that there's an overrepresentation there as well.
Overall, I would say probably not. I
wouldn't say in the same way. Yeah.
The same, like people who work for Burning Man, different vibe. We're a whole different crew of human beings. I mean, you tell anyone, you know, go live in a tent for 3 to 6 weeks. We'll feed you and make sure you have water, but that's about it. Like, and you're going to build everything for us. You know, a lot of people don't look at that and they're just like, that sounds like a good time to spend, you know, my August. And so I think among people who work for Burning Man or volunteer for Burning Man, it's a little bit higher.
Yeah. But not in the population.
General population, I wouldn't say it's any more prevalent than it would be in the quote unquote real world.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a huge population of weirdos, freaks, artists, doers, dreamers. Like it's all of those for sure. And just because you're any of those things doesn't mean you're not neurotypical or, you know, like, but for the most part, yeah, I think it attracts so many different people, but I mean, it definitely has a special appeal to neuroatypical folks.
Yeah.
Which I've only discovered over the years. I'm a late in life diagnosed, you know, a person. So I didn't really pay attention to it as much until I realized like, oh, this is starting to explain a lot. One of my friends joked with me. She's like,
were you diagnosed as autistic and ADHD?
Just autistic at this time.
Okay.
But I'm not like actively pursuing, as one of my really fun friends said. She was like, I believe in a couple things. You can get diagnosed formally or by peer review.
Yeah. I've heard people say if you look around and all of your friends are neuroatypical, you might want to like look at yourself.
Exactly. And like that, I mean, that has definitely proven to be true. You know, I look around now and it's like all of my Burning Man, my whole team is like ADHD and I love it.
Yeah.
It just function beautifully. Like we all are just good at different things. And we all know we're weird. Like we all know we're weirdos already. So we're coming to the playing field being like, the weirdo in me sees the weirdo in you. And we definitely do.
By peer review. I kind of love that. I haven't heard of that.
And that came from Ruby Bell, a very amazing Chicago sex worker. She's like, peer review. And I was like, yeah, I fully believe in peer review at this point in life.
Yeah.
Because it's so prevalent and we just don't really, and like as obviously a female bodied and presenting person in life, it's much harder to get diagnosed, especially when you're younger.
Yeah. And you don't present in the same way.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And I remember telling my mother, my brother was screened for autism and turned out to have ADHD. And I looked at her and I was like, Ma, you missed a whole kid. Like,
Yeah.
you missed a whole kid here. How did you miss this one? Like,
it was different though. Like there's way more information now though. Like
and also realizing the genetic history of autism in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Going, down the generation and being like, okay, this parent's autistic, that grandparent's autistic. It's just you start realizing it more. And
that's happened in my family too, because my son, who's 7, is he's nonverbal autistic. He still doesn't talk. He scripts, but he doesn't have conversations. He knows a lot of words, but he's considered nonverbal. And then when he got diagnosed, like later, PJ got diagnosed, and then we look at like their dad, and we're like, yeah, okay.
It's and dots are connecting here.
Yeah, and I have ADHD, and our son was also diagnosed with ADHD. But then, like, I look at my oldest kid too, and I'm like, because she's female, like, I think that especially when she was, they weren't screening girls for autism or ADHD because
you might have gotten lucky with ADHD, but screening, but definitely not.
No. Yeah. And I think about that a lot. And I think about the fact that like they caught my son when he was 2 because he didn't talk and he's lining up trains. And they're like, yeah, that's what little boys do who are autistic. Right. But
I mean, that really does fit the mold of what people stereotypically are like, oh, time for a doctor.
Yeah. But, and I didn't see it because I wasn't looking for it, and I take him to his 2-year screening and they're like, does he point at things? And I'm like, no, is he supposed to? Like, does he do this? Does he, I'm like,
it's your kid, it's your, they're
just get used to how somebody is in the world. And I'm just like, I didn't even know they were screening me. I was just like, no, he doesn't do that. And they're like, does he do this? And I'm like, no. And then they're like,
to do that?
I don't know. He takes me to what he wants. He grabs my hand and pulls me there. Like, that's what he does. Yeah. And they were like, I think he needs to be evaluated for autism. And I was like, interesting, and then I could see what they were talking about, but it didn't occur to me because I was like, he's not talking, but 2-year-olds don't. Do they talk? I don't know.
Conversational humans all the time, they're too. Like,
what are we supposed to be having philosophical conversations? Like, I don't know. He's like, baby,
No, and it is like my brother got caught when he was, 6 or 7, prime age for homework, the ADHD.
Yeah.
And, he stimmed a lot. So he was they were like, does he have Asperger's? Is he on the spectrum? Like, what's going on with him? And, he got the most exclusive screening you could get. We had really good health insurance.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there now. I'm just like, you guys went through all that with him. You missed a whole, the older of the two too. Like, I'm older than him. So I'm like, you missed the whole, but also I'm like, I just didn't.
I think it's also that like girls don't tend to like express it in behaviorally. And so they're like, oh, they're quiet. They're not disruptive to class. They might not do their homework, but often like that, because I was like that.
Too much and asked too many questions.
Yeah.
That, and like those things, my parents were just like, why is that bad?
Yeah.
They didn't see it as autism. They were like, when the teacher would come in, they'd be like, why is that bad? Like, why are you calling us in here to tell us this bullshit? Like, what?
Yeah. I was kind of like that with my older daughter too. Like when they called me in and were like, her desk is messy. And I was like, I don't go to school with her. Like, what do you want me to do about that? You're here.
Your desk. Like what? It's not like their room. Like you can't police their desk at school. Like
I remember talking to her 3rd grade teacher and being like, okay, like, what is it that you want from me? I don't. You're here. I'm not here. Why don't you tell her to clean her desk? I don't know what to tell you.
It's very weird to be an adult neurodivergent human that didn't know I was until I was a grown adult.
Yeah.
And it explains a lot. It explains a lot. And I've been able to just like get over a lot of things or process a lot of things that formerly did not make sense, but now make complete and full sense.
Do you feel like you have like, what did that feel like for you? Did it feel like I don't know, do you feel more like whole or like you have more self-knowledge, or like, how did you integrate that information?
I think it was a very easy integration because it was kind of like a, like, you know, come to Jesus, bright light moment of just understanding. And as someone who has received mental health treatment very early in life, so I was very already, like, I wasn't therapy averse or therapy avoidant. I had been in it for a very long time at that point. And once I, you know, realized that it was easy to be like, okay, this really explains, you know, why I struggle with this behavior, why I struggle with that, why I can't understand people when they say this thing. Or it just gave a lot of revelation. And once I was able to integrate that into I am as a person, it was relatively easy to just move back into the world and realize, like, what was this, what was that, you know, as my diagnosis and symptoms and presentations go. And then kind of how to improve on things that I had difficulties with from being neuroatypical. Like, it was like, oh, I see those things and why I have such challenges with them now.
Right.
And that was very, very nice to be able to.
I have that experience too with ADHD where, like, I was a very bad student until I got to college and I could hyper focus on the things that I was interested in. Then like I did fine. But when I was in grade school and high school and we had to like manage many, many different classes of things that I didn't give a shit about, like I really struggled and even would do things like I would do my homework and then I would lose it. And, you know, and as a girl who didn't have behavior problems, I think people thought I was dumb, you know.
You're just stupid then. You're
right.
Weird,
like
you're stupid, you're not smart, whatever it is.
Right. And I even had like high school counselors when they like bring you in to talk to you about like what's next in your life, who are like, you're going to have to just go get a job because you're not college bound. You know, like they just were like, you're dumb, you know. And later when I went back, and I just didn't get the support that I needed. But when I went back and like thought about things in this light, I was like, wait, I'm not actually a dumb person. I like just didn't have the support that I needed. And the way that they were trying to get me to interact with school was like so foreign to me that I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of people's experience, especially with ADHD. And I was very lucky. I was very good at school. And I'm an information collector. That's how my brain works, which is how I actually fell into my current job at Burning Man, because I have to know so much stuff in my brain that has no other application except for 6 weeks out of the damn year in the middle of the desert. Like BLM contracts, I'll tell you all about them. Like, oh, this, I've got them. Like, and it's just like this. It's very funny to me. And now I love how my brain works.
Yeah.
Now I can
found
feel
what you found. It's like place. Yeah.
Yes, I feel more like my brain has superpowers than not now.
Yeah.
I love that, because it's just like once you realize what's quote unquote wrong, it might not be quote unquote wrong. It's just different.
Yeah. So I realize that as like a writer, I think that like my ADHD helps me so much as a writer because I like bring together things that other people don't think are connected. You know, like I weave a bunch of stories.
Connections.
Yeah. The people are like, I never put those things together. And like, that's how I've built my whole like writing based on that. So like, I get that, but that wasn't good for memorizing stuff in school because I am not an information collector. I'm a like, weaver together of things that are in front of me, not things that I remember. And
it's so fun to know other neuroatypical people and be like, how does your brain work like this? Like, you know, it's fun. And as a former, you know, therapist and stuff, because I did my graduate degree and everything. And that's when I started working, was to supplement that last year of psychology master's program. And it ended up being such a better fit and a better pay that I never ended up going back to the mental health field. Outside of working with Burning Man during the event for mental health crisis.
And that's actually neat that you could weave those things together.
Yes. And I love being able to weave them together, and it gives my life a lot more cohesion.
Yeah. And I have to say, as sex workers, especially in-person sex workers that do one-on-one stuff with clients, a lot of it is like therapeutic stuff too.
It is. It is. A lot of
It's
people
not
call it
therapy, but it's
I'm not doing therapy, but
right.
this might be your personal version of therapy, and that's
Right.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. But
And
it's good to have a sense of like, yeah, I would think that mental health training would be useful.
It is very.
So, like, to wrap this up, what if there were people who were like interested in Burning Man, what would you suggest to them, or what would your advice be?
It is more accessible than you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to pop a spotlight on it's not just drugs and nudity.
Okay.
There's actually not that much I mean, there's some nudity, but there's not, I mean, it's not like there's just people think of it as just like a naked drug orgy fest, right? And parts of it can definitely 100% be that.
Mm-hmm.
But it could also be people just like in a jam band. You know, it's like it could be anything. So we have what's called Mobility Camp.
Okay.
It focuses on accessibility for disabled persons.
Mm-hmm.
And we have finally now the man base, which, as most people know, we burn the giant man in, you know, huge, giant flaming bonfire that is wonderful. And this is the second year in a row now that the man base has been fully wheelchair accessible.
Oh, that's neat.
Yes. So it used to be kind of like a structure that you would climb or go up into. And now they're starting to incorporate ramps or have more of it be ground level. And it's really amazing. Like Mobility Camp will take a very large art car and do art tours for people who have disability. They'll allow you to charge your scooter or your wheelchair. And there's just a lot more accessibility than you think there is. The resources are there. The press photos and like Instagram does not tell you what Burning Man looks like.
Right.
That's what is a curated experience and what a curated experience looks like. You're not too old. You're not too young. You're not too black. You're not too white. You're not too any of these things. We've been actually doing a lot of initiatives to make more Black art come to the playa. Like we have been made aware of the feeling that people of color feel excluded from Burning. So we've made an active effort to reach out and include those people because we don't want them to feel excluded.
No, right.
Because I mean, typically Burning Man is seen as like a rich white people thing. Does it take a lot of money? It can. It can, you know, it can be just your ticket and a little bit else. But it's like I tell people, if you want to go, you need a minimum of $1,000. And that is inaccessible for a lot of people. And I completely understand that. But as far as people thinking it's going to take like, you know, $5 or $10 grand to go to Burning Man, I'm like, nah, not unless you want to dump that kind of money.
Yeah. Right. I mean, like you're saying, though, it can be whatever you want it to be. So it could be very like decadent or it could be very basic.
Yes, it could be either of those things. Some people literally pop a like one-man pup tent and that's just where they sleep. Like, so it depends on your living style of what you like. And there's so many good resources out there now. And if you're going to buy a ticket, we now have an internal system to verify that ticket is real. So people aren't getting scammed. You know, it's like we've really come up with the tech and stuff to make it less fuckery, but definitely more accessible. You will fit in. You aren't too old. A lot of people are like, oh my God, I'm in my 50s or 60s. I'm like, no, you're not going to be too old. I bet 80-year-old retired couples come by and just be like, cool, what's going on here? We want to go to Burning Man when we went. Like,
my mom really wants to go to Burning Man.
This year, my mom's coming with me.
Oh, nice.
She's done a regional burn with me before. And now that I have a trailer to live in, she's more likely, you know, she's like, okay, I'm coming. And I'm like, okay, you can come. Because she loves it and she's been in love with it since I started going. She didn't know she would fall in love with it, but she did. Yeah. And she's an artist through and through. Yeah. And is going to have a blast when she does come. And yeah, you can totally share it with anybody and anything. And there's a lot of misconceptions about it. So what you see on Instagram is just as curated as everything else you fucking see on Instagram. It's the top 10% of people's life. They don't show you the 50-mile-an-hour dust storm that ruined their, their freshly washed hair. Like, or whatever it is, or, it's like, they don't show you that it is hard.
Yeah.
The photos may look shiny and sparkly and clean, but I'm like, you're never that fucking clean. Like, you're never that shiny and sparkly. Like, like, it's just, you're covered in dust and you're out there doing whatever you want to do. And you don't have to fulfill any expectations of anybody. Everyone, I mean, pretty much that I know, whether it's from people who don't work for the org or people who do work for the org, they're like, challenge yourself. Put yourself in situations you wouldn't normally put yourself in. Because it's an environment where there is the freedom to fail. And asking for help is, if you ask someone for help, 9 times out of 10, they're going to help you. And then their friends are going to come help you too. And you're going to have a whole group of people helping you before you know it. And it taught me to ask for help because I had to. I didn't have a choice. As someone who struggled with that a long time, like I still struggle with it. Who am I kidding? But yeah, like it forces you to do things you're uncomfortable with, but in a way that's very safe and a way that's very, I don't know. Yeah, it's very safe. The only thing I do warn people about, because it is awesome for neurotypical people, is that it is not, if you ever need audio solace, you have to go seek it out.
Yeah.
Like, you have to take a significant trip outside of the city into the outer bits to get into that silence.
That's really important, because that's something I really struggle with. Like, I don't like loud places at all. Like, I can't go to loud restaurants or bars. When I get a massage, I was telling somebody this, I tell them to turn the music off because it takes up so much like headspace for me that I can't feel my body.
I understand. Yeah. It's definitely can be super, super audio overwhelming. And I warn people about this all the time. I'm like, you got to seek your own solace, because even if you don't think it's getting to you, it will get to you. Even neurotypical people, it gets to them. And meltdowns, they have fights with their campmates. It's like, you're in an environment where you forget to drink enough water. You've been not sleeping. You've been doing drugs. You've been doing whatever. It's like it adds some stressors, but everyone's there to do the same thing. We're all on the same team. We're all here to build the same thing. We're all here to build a city and burn it to the ground.
That's a good place to end it. Okay, so I like to end every show with 3 questions. So what are you reading?
What am I reading? I just got a copy of the first translation of A History of Contemporary Prostitution. It was an 1826 book written in France, and I can't think of the author at the moment.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Translated by a doc or a postdoc student named Jack, and I supported his Kickstarter and got a printed copy, and it's a tome. It's great.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I recently got it, and then other than that, I've been reading The Fabric of Civilization, which is a history of textiles.
Oh, that's cool.
I love my history books.
Yeah. You're an information collector.
Exactly. It tracks. It all tracks.
What are you listening to?
What am I listening to? Oh, my playlist is so scattered. What am I listening to? This is like the hardest question anyone could ever ask me, because it's like, what am I not listening to? I've been listening to a lot of EDM artists I haven't listened to in a while, like Pfisher, like, like just big house artists that like they're still around. I've been listening to a lot of like super chill stuff. I mean, I've even been listening to like Orvelle Peck, like, so it's kind of a giant array going on.
Yeah. And what are you excited about?
I'm always excited about burning. It's so nerdy. I'm like, it's, but we gear up for our year, we're already talking about contracts and stuff. And So I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited. I'm getting to go back to Ireland at the end of April for a week and to see
cool.
my best friends who I haven't seen in a while because we were always on different continents.
Nice.
And just go travel some more. And so yeah, those are
I went to Ireland with my mom. My mom is Irish she's American, but like her heritage is Irish. And I was in Europe for an academic conference back in the day when I did that sort of thing. And I had 2 conferences and like a week in between. So I said to my mom, like, do you want to come and meet me? Because I have free time in between these 2 conferences. And she was like, yeah. And I said, I'm in England, but like Europe is small. Just pick a place and I'll come meet you, And she's like, I want to drink beer in Ireland. And I was like, all right, let's do it.
I love it.
And that's what we did. We drank beer. We went to the Guinness distillery. We went dancing in the pubs. It was fantastic.
I love it. I'm lucky enough to have Travel Daddy.
That's nice.
One of the places that he can fly me quite easily. So I'm going back there with him and I'm like, well, I'm back there again. I was there last year, but I took more time in like continental Europe because like Prague, just like I was like, I haven't gotten there yet. And I'm just like, I'm going to pick up and move there. I would leave Chicago for Prague. It's the only place. Anywhere in the Czech Republic, I would absolutely just like vanish to. If I ever vanish, that's where you'll find me. I'll just like, I'll be somewhere in the woods and rocks and rivers.
I'll remember that when people on Twitter are like, what happened to Ava? I'm going to be like, she's in Prague.
She's different or something. She's just somewhere in the Czech world. I don't know. And yeah, so I'm very lucky to have that. And so this time he's taking me with, and I'm just going to rent a car this time.
Nice.
And my best friend's going to take the ferry over because she always wanted to take the ferry. And we're just going to have fun going around looking at like, creepy relics and ruins and all the things. And I've gotten to see the cliffs, but she has not yet.
I haven't. We didn't make it there. We were only in Dublin, and I want to.
I put up with a 4-hour bus ride. Because I wanted to see them that bad. Last time I went.
And was it worth it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But I'm also like, my happy place is like green rocks and water.
Yeah. So it was the trifecta.
So for me, and like also I've wanted to see them since I was young. And I love the nature of Europe because it's different than here. And it's, I'm the nature horror of like travel. Like, I'm like, okay, let's look at libraries, really old shit, and then their local forests and rivers. Like,
I'm the food one. I'm like, I want to eat the food in every city that I go to.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, Czech food I grew up on Czech food. So like me there, I'm like, I am so happy. So happy. But yeah, I love eating different food, different places, their interpretation. And also like anyone who knows me knows I will die of my love of encased meats. I love hot dogs. The stained glass hot dog on the Chicago flag that was going around Twitter, that was a gift to me from someone. that is mine. So something I also love about Prague is they serve giant hot dogs on fucking baguettes, and it's delicious. And then I was like, I'm definitely in the right place. Like for me. Yeah.
Okay, so we're
common for that, but I was like, I got there and I'm like, I mean, you've got good crusty bread and like a solid ass like
hot dog
going on. Okay, I think we can go with this. Like,
where can people find you?
I am on Twitter. I am on Instagram. I am anywhere on the internet. It's a little hard to find me because yes, my name does refer to the Smashing Pumpkins song.
I never thought about that.
It does. Yes. A lot of people ask. And yes, it is true. I got my name there a long time ago. And Ava Adore. I mean, if you just search, Ava Adore, Twitter, Linktree, Trist, you'll find all my links.
Okay.
And then Substack, all that good stuff. Because of course, everywhere your username has to be slightly different now.
I know.
So I feel like it's at this everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was really great to talk to you today.
It was so great to talk to you. Thanks for having me to talk about my weird little crazy interests.
No, it's really great. Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster. The music is by Benjamin J. Benamati. Our intern is Anna Pfisher. You can follow us on socials on Instagram and Twitter at Not Hustling Pod. Signing off. Have a great week.